60 up on the Nifty and 190 up on the Sensex.
We're off about, 20 points from the highs. 11,534 is where the Nifty 50 is trading at. We're up about 76 points. It's been that way now for a while. The Bank Nifty is also holding on with strong gains across the board.
Not just the Nifty has defended 11,500, it's actually put on some gains.
It's been actually a pretty good day for the bulls. We have seen a pullback, a lot of it, of course, driven by short covering.
Markets perk up on hopes that a US Fed rate cut could be around the corner. Nifty snaps its 4-day losing streak with a gain of over 80 points. Sensex gains more than 250.
Reliance Infrastructure jumps 10% after 16 lenders to Reliance Infra sign an intercreditor agreement. This gives the company 180 days to resolve its debt issues.
Auto stocks rally on short covering despite witnessing sharp decline in sales in June. The sector pins its hopes on festive demand. Mahindra & Mahindra's Pawan Goenka is cautious on overall demand and even tractor sales. Siam chief Rajan Vadhera believes situation will only improve from here on.
Turbulence at the Indigo boardroom continues to hurt the stock. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that market regulator SEBI has called the airline's company secretary for a meeting and has sought a response on the promoter spat by the 19th of this month.
Among stocks in news, Suzlon Energy rises on reports that Brookfield may buy a controlling stake in the debt-ridden company. DHFL rises after lenders give the company 7 days more to present a resolution plan. Bharat Forge rallies after the group signs a 700 crore rupee defense contract with Israel-based Rafale systems. Well, those were the top 5 headlines from Dalal Street on a day when finally the bulls turned up. Not quite for a party, but at least turned up. Hello and welcome to Markets Today Talk Back, the show where we tell you everything that happened in those 6 hours of trading in just 5 headlines. I'm Lata Venkatesh, with me my colleague Prashant Nair. Hi Prashant.
Lata, hi, and not a bad showing at all. 76 points higher on the Nifty. Bank Nifty looking solid with about a 0.5% odd gain. Well, the broader market left a fair bit in terms of what it could have done, because advance decline, there was a gap. Advances were more than declines, but I mean, for a market up 76 on the Nifty, it didn't look that way as far as broader markets go. Over the next 30 minutes, we will talk about all of that happened right from the word go. And of course, we'll take your questions. Joining us to answer your questions are Mayuresh Joshi and our technical expert, Mitesh Thakkar. Gentlemen, thanks very much for being with us here on the show. But let's, as always, spend 2 minutes taking a look at what really happened in the session right from the morning. Lata.
Well, I'm just going to repeat and reiterate what you said and what we said in the headlines. Jerome Powell, in his the Fed chairman, in his testimony to Congress, clearly said that incoming data is indicating slowdown in the U.S. economy, and therefore, because of impending slowdown because of the trade wars, and therefore it sounded like a rate cut is round the corner by the end of this month. All markets have risen, ours just fell in step. Now, the good news is also that we ignored the bad news on crude. Probably, or why probably, definitely the markets are taking the interpretation that this is only because of the storm, and given the slowdown, once the storm blows over, Cyclone Barry or whatever it's called, the crude prices once again will move towards 60. So the $67 on crude has been ignored, more so by the bond markets. The bond yields have fallen below 6.5. Now that's quite historic. So you could see that reflected in the strength of the financials, especially the private sector banks and even some of the larger non-bank financials. The negatives in the rally is that, okay, the positive is that Nifty is definitely finding support at 11,500 thereabouts on a closing basis and 11,470 as an intraday low. That's the positive. The negative is exactly what you pointed out. Not much in terms of breadth, or what you mean, that broad market is not really rising. The mid-cap at an index level once in a way shows a bit of green, but not in terms of number of stocks. So the slowdown blues are still seen in that. But you tell us stock-wise, what all did you notice?
So, more gainers on my list than losers, even though, advanced decline, as you pointed out, also it's not that wasn't that great. But still, media, metals, autos, PSU banks and pharma. I mean, these are sectoral indices which did very, very well. So, I mean, autos is one which I think stands out. It's lost so much recently. Pharma continues its gain, so it's actually had a good week so far. And, media largely propelled by what's happening with Z in trade today. Okay, let's come to the gainers today. I mean, the big ones. IndusInd, results tomorrow. I mean, the stock was up in a strong way. Z on your screen, 6.6% or so. JSW Steel was up about 5%. Hero Moto from the auto pack stood out as a large volume gainer as well. BEML was up about 8%. DLF was up 5%. It's back at about 186. Reliance Infra was higher strongly. I mean, actually, a couple of the ADG stocks did well as well. Dish TV was up 16%. 67 million shares there. Page Industries, 3%. There was Tata Communication. Info Edge. I think Info Edge is back at all-time highs in a market like this. Tata Communication, Info Edge, Arvind, Bandhan Bank were the other sort of gainers. What are the notable losers? Indigo, Sharp. I mean, you could say the stock was down 3%, or you could say the stock was up almost 6-7% from the day's low. But Graphite and HEG along with Indigo were some of the large volume-led losers in trade. Lata.
Well, let's check out where do we go from here. Although 11,500 is quite clearly a support level, can it climb much? First to you, Mitesh. Is there a long trade? Have you gone home with the long position? And, can you go long even further?
I think I would modify the support to about 11,450. That's where the weekly averages are converging. Though we didn't test that level, we had a low of around 11,460. But I think the key to watch out for the next week also will be 11,450. And I think on the upside, I think the structure has been definitely damaged. I think we've kind of bounced back from near support areas. But overall, if you look at the chart patterns, breaking below 11,670, 650 zone was quite negative. So I think while there were some longs initiated for a short-term perspective, my overall belief is that the markets might, correct once we hit levels of 11,650 again. So I think around those levels, we'll explore shorting opportunities with a stop just above 11,710. Okay,
fair point. With that, let's get to the second headline now. Reliance Infra jumped 10% after 16 lenders to it signed an intercreditor agreement. That gives the company 180 days to resolve its debt issues. Anisha is here to tell us more details that the company announced today. Anisha.
Well, yes, Reliance Infrastructure did sign an intercreditor agreement with 16 lenders. That means for 180 days, none of these lenders can drag the company into NCLT because no amount or interest will become due, and hence the company cannot default. Now, for the time being, this removes the overhang on the stock because remember, the company has been facing a lot of liquidity crunch. The entire liabilities as of March 2019 was around 52,500 crore rupees. So you can understand it is a bit difficult for the company to find any resolution within 180 days. However, the company does maintain that they're confident that they will be able to monetize the asset and make the debt sustainable. However, you have to take it with a pinch of salt because they've already announced the divestment of the road asset for around 3,600 crore rupees, and they're also looking to sell their Reliance Center at Santa Cruz for some value. But do remember, a couple of these sales will only garner them around 5 to 10,000 crore rupees. So it's not enough to fully resolve the company's debt issue. Let's see what the company plans further. But the understanding is that perhaps with the EPC contract of the companies going forward, they would be able to generate some money out of it. But as of now, it remains a bit of dicey situation because 180 days would not move the needle for Reliance Infrastructure. Back to you.
Okay, stock 10%, 11% by close. We've got a question coming through. Chidambar Z from Odisha has written in with a question on Reliance Infra. He holds 118 shares of the company. His price is 299 rupees a share. The stock's at 50 rupees today. He wants to know whether to hold or sell. Mayuresh, Reliance Infra, any thoughts?
Afternoon, Prashant. So I think no official coverage on this one, but as the analyst was mentioning, probably I think it's a sentimental booster. What actually comes through in 180 days, whether they're actually able to monetize their BOT asset for the enterprise value that they've mentioned, what probably happens in terms of their sale in terms of the unit that they've got in Santa Cruz. I think they are all important points, and deleveraging becomes very, very critical. So again, I think it's an if and but story. I think when it is going to happen, at what time periodicity, at what value. So I think it's just a trading sentimental pop-up in my opinion. I think the structural fundamental issues still stay with the company and the group as a whole. So again, I think we still prefer private financials, qualitative NBFCs, which in my opinion should do very, very well over the next 12 to 18 months.
Fair point. Yeah, difficult to find infra buyers as well, and Reliance has quite a bouquet of assets that it may want to sell. The third headline today: auto stocks rallied in trade on short covering. Nifty Auto outperformed the benchmark indices to end 2% in the green. Hero MotoCorp, Tata Motors and TVS Motors led the pack. This despite auto sales witnessing a sharp decline in June. We've been talking about it for quite some time now. But the sector is pinning its hopes on the festive demand. So the revival is expected around August, September, when the festival season starts. We spoke with Mahindra and Mahindra's Pawan Goenka, and he said that the auto industry is not at the moment planning to reduce growth guidance. At least Pawan Goenka himself isn't, but they may have to revise their tractor growth forecast downwards to from the 5% mark. Listen to what he had to say.
Last month we had, I think, 4 to 5 days of shutdown, which means on a 25 days working, we are about 20% shutdown. Yeah, that's right, 20% shutdown on a 25-day working. And the month of July is looking better. I don't know right now whether we will have a shutdown or not, but even if we did, it will not be 5 or 6 days. It will be somewhat lower. The tractor, we had said 5% at the beginning of the year, and we have seen a degrowth of 15% in the first quarter. In our internal estimate, the first quarter was supposed to be small degrowth, maybe 5% degrowth, but not 15%. And therefore, looking at the next 9 months, the 5% growth will require 10% growth for next 9 months to get 5% for the whole year. And 10% appears very unlikely.
Okay, Pawan Goenka there. Ravinder Singh has written in with a question on Bajaj Auto. He wants to know the right time to buy 500 shares of the company. Okay, so autos in focus. Mayuresh, let me come to you again on this one. Ravinder wants to know what is the right time to buy Bajaj Auto.
So in my opinion, Prashant, I think the ideal strategy here would be to wait for Q1 numbers. And the way the numbers have been stacking up for Bajaj Auto or for most auto players, at least on a month-on-month basis, you've probably seen some respite coming through with inventory levels coming back to normal. The expectations in terms of the bump up starting August, when the festivity sales will start coming round, is also something keeping two-wheeler stocks and four-wheeler stocks in check. And the last element obviously is their overseas sales as well. So there have been some markets which are still under some amount of stress, but the expectations of normalization thereof is also something to be seen. So I think Q1, Q2 might be a little bit on the softer side. Second half where the recovery hopes are pinned, expectations of undercutting specifically in entry-level motorcycles and what happens with input cost pressures on margins also to be observed. So wait out for Q1 numbers. If the stock does correct, I think an ideal strategy would be to then start accumulating the stock in a staggered way over the next few weeks.
Okay, thank you very much. Mitesh, is 2700 some kind of a support at all? Does one start accumulation in an SIP fashion or no, wait?
I think last time when we saw the stock correct, it had lows around 2500 zones, and I think that could be an area to watch out for. And below that, there is also 2200, 2250 zone. So I think the ideal way should be, yes, it's not a bad stock to accumulate, but maybe try closer to about 2500 and add more as you drop another 8-10% from there. So I think I don't think 2200 will be taken out, so that becomes your stop loss. I think 2550, 2600 to about 2350 becomes your accumulation zone.
All right, gentlemen, do stay on. We will have more questions after this break. But while we get into the break, let's leave you with the opinion we got from JP Morgan's Bharat Iyer. He explains why return expectations in the near future will have to be moderated, but he has a few buys. Listen.
Yeah, I think we are in a mature bull market, and that means that return expectations will have to be modest and we'll have to contend with volatility. So I'll just give you the backdrop to that. I mean, if you see, we've been, this bull market's like almost 10 years going now. And valuations are not cheap. You're trading at 18, 19 times forward earnings. I mean, there are growth concerns both locally and globally. And, you're probably going to get earnings growth in the low to mid-teens, which will be a driver of markets. But, the volatility can't be wished away because of the issues that we see globally. So I guess, if you make the normal 10, 12% that you make in equities every year, and with some volatility, I think that should be par for the course. We believe that growth is still okay. I mean, it's not as good as one would have liked it to be, but it's it's got stable growth prospects, and it's quite a defensive in this kind of environment, given the visibility we see. The only issue is valuations are a tad expensive, but that gets offset by the fact that companies are typically very shareholder friendly and return a lot of cash. So within the exporters, the call we have is we are neutral IT services, whereas we are underweight healthcare.
Harish Joshi and Mitesh Thakkar are with us, and they are taking us through the day's action. We got through 3 of the top 5 stories, so here's the 4th headline of the day. Interglobe Aviation very much continues to be in the news. It's continued its slide to end 3% in the red. It was about 6% off the lows, though. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that SEBI, the regulator, has called the company secretary for a meeting. Remember, the airline is currently in the midst of a promoter spat. Sonia Shenoy is here with those details. Sonia, what are you picking up?
Thanks a lot for that. There are reports which indicate that the pact between the promoters will be checked by the government for any violations of the Companies Act. And if they find that the Companies Act has been violated, then the shareholder agreement could get annulled as well between the promoters. Now, if that happens, there will be a fresh set of complications for the promoters as well as for the company. Corporate lawyers say that the governance and shareholder disputes are 2 distinct matters. Now, CNBC-TV18 understands that the Civil Aviation Ministry has still not sought any response from the Indigo promoters just yet. Also, we are trying to verify if the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has reached out and is looking into the issue or not. But what we do understand is that SEBI has called the company secretary of Indigo for a meeting. This meeting will result in some response that Indigo will have to give by the 19th of July. And remember, there was big delivery selling in the stock yesterday as well, over 400 crores of delivery selling, so incremental pressure seen there.
Okay, so with that, we have to get a view on the Interglobe chart. What is the chart saying, Mitesh? Can it fall further?
I would believe so. I think, it's been a very, very strong selling which has seen, very negative candlestick pattern for the last 2 days. 1240, 1245 is a 200 average area, so I think that should be tested. But overall, if you look at the chart pattern, there's a good chance that we are looking at sub 1200 levels also being visited. So between 1240, 1200, I think somewhere the stock could make at least, if nothing else, a temporary bottom. So under the 10% downside should happen from here.
And Mayuresh, would you buy the distress?
Well, wait it out, Lata, because as Sonia was mentioning, I think there are too many ifs and buts, at least at this point of time. So I think the next few weeks, I think you'll probably get far more clarity on these headwinds that the stock is facing. And once clarity probably emerges, hopefully in the next few weeks, I think from an operationality perspective, I think there is nothing wrong. I think structurally, I think it's in a very, very sweet spot. Jet has vacated the space, so I think the slots that are coming their way, the expectations of international routes with better margins, and the expectations of better yield movement coming through with control on their CASK factor and the RASK factor actually stabilizing. I think those factors are absolutely fine. I think it's this only intermittent effect that will probably play out on the stock price. So I think just wait it out. I think once the clarity comes through, you'll probably have a better idea in terms of getting into the stock. And if it corrects, as Mitesh is saying, I think the valuations also become a little bit more attractive to probably buy at that time.
Okay, with that, we come to the 5th and the last headline for the day. Stocks in news. Suzlon spiked in trade on reports that investment firm Brookfield Asset Management could be buying or looking to buy a stake in this debt-laden company. That's according to newspaper reports that this company, Brookfield, is in talks to restructure Suzlon's outstanding bank loans of more than 11,000 crore rupees under a one-time settlement plan.
The other one was Bharat Forge. The stock ended at about 463, about 4.5% higher. The group has signed a 700 crore rupee defense contract in partnership with Israel-based Rafael Systems. The contract is for the supply of 1,000 Barak-8 missile kits to the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force. My colleague Kevin Lee caught up with the chairman of the Kalyani Group, Baba Kalyani, and spoke with him about these defense orders from the government.
A lot of time has elapsed for any big contracts to come in, but that's the way the defense systems work all over the world. It's not nothing special about it in India. Okay, I think everybody was on a euphoria that suddenly some big orders are going to fall in everybody's laps. It never happens that way. I think you need to create capabilities. This cycle is a long cycle. It's not a short cycle.
Yes, wise words. It's a long cycle. Well, among other stocks in news, DHFL rose in trade today to close about 2% in the green. This after CNBC-TV18 learned that the company has been given an additional 7 days to present a resolution proposal by its lenders. Ritu Singh, who has been following this story, is joining in with the details. Ritu, tell us.
Well, Lata, today the bankers, which is the core group of 7 lenders that have the largest exposure to DHFL, held a meeting with the bondholders, primarily the mutual funds and the provident funds, to get a sense of what everyone's views on the resolution roadmap for the company is. So exploratory talks were held and broad contours of the resolution plan were discussed with all of these stakeholders that were part of the meeting, including SBI Caps and the promoter of DHFL, that is Kapil Vadhavan. We're given to understand as you said, banks have allowed 7 days now to DHFL to come back with its final proposal as far as the resolution of the company is concerned. Do remember, we have been reporting DHFL remains in talks with private equity players for a potential stake sale deal to the likes of Aeon Capital, Cerberus Capital, and now even Oaktree, which could fetch it upwards of 7,000 crore rupees. Now, as far as the banks are concerned, they've conveyed to the bondholders that the resolution plan involves part restructuring, part debt conversion, and perhaps even a new line of credit on certain terms and conditions, including the promoters pledging their stake with the lenders until the execution of the resolution plan. Separately, we're also given to understand that some of these bondholders had raised concerns that they want to be part of the resolution plan and not have to face losses, and banks have assured them that the overall restructuring plan will be comprehensive and it will ensure value maximization for all the stakeholders that are involved.
Okay, well, let's see what comes up and who's buying. We can then think of value maximization. Actually, Ritu has been pretty busy. She also had an exclusive chat with the Axis Bank Managing Director and CEO, Amitabh Chaudhary, and he's quite worried about the slowdown and therefore the need to be very careful about lending.
Generally, if you see the trend in the market, I think some parameters of the economy are definitely slowing down. I think the numbers for car sales came out yesterday and they show a real slowdown. You are seeing a slowdown on the consumer goods side also. The credit growth is also a bit tepid. And you're also seeing some stress developing in the, generally across sectors. So you have to be careful about just being out there and giving credit out. We'll talk about the growth when we have the opportunity to talk about it. But yes, I think I'll only say that we have to be cautious about how do we look at growth going forward.
Okay, that is Amitabh Chaudhary. Ritu, thanks very much for getting us that as well. Well, let me now end the show by thanking you, the viewer. CNBC-TV18 has emerged as the most watched TV news channel on the day of the budget. We were India's #1 choice with almost 60% viewership on budget day. Not just that, CNBC-TV18 beat competition in the budget week as well as with 60% viewership. And when the finance minister spoke after the budget, we had more than 98% viewership.
CNBC-TV18 has been your budget destination for 19 years. The biggest voices on the market, economy, and top policymakers were on the channel. CNBC-TV18 actually was not only the most watched business news channel, it was also the most watched English news channel. So once again, we want to thank all of you for the trust and the continued support that you have vested in us.